Welcome my friend to my second video about Gunslinger, the all-time masterpiece from Richard Hamblen, published back in the days by the Avalon Hill Game Company. After viewing my first video, you know the basics of this game. You know how to move and to shoot, and that's pretty all you need to handle a 1 vs 1 gun duel. But Gunslinger can also stage richer and more complex showdowns. There are 26 showdowns, let's say 26 scenarios, in the Gunslinger rulebook. Let's take as an example showdown number 7, the bar fight. Every showdown in the game looks like this one. First, the scenario gives some description of the historical situation. All this really happened in Austin, Texas on Christmas Day 1876. Ben Thompson and his henchmen are making rough sport of Mark Wilson, a theater owner. The barkeeper comes to Mark's defense, picks up his shotgun, and the battle begins just when the town sheriff is about to enter the bar. The opposing forces section defines who are the fighters. They are grouped in 3 sides, A, B, and C. And that means this is a 3-player showdown. There are showdowns from 2 to 7 players, and it's up to you to create your own. With more players than that, there is no limit. Each player gets characters. Here, the first player, side A, plays with 4 characters. There is a special table in the game that lists all possible characters. Of course, it is old-fashioned and quite ugly, and I decided to give you for free a brand new version, 100% made by Jean-Michel Grosjeu. Here it is. So, here are the 48 available characters in the game, in alphabetical order, with all their characteristics and equipment. Let's see how it works with our example. The first character in players A's team, Mark Wilson, the theater owner, is the owner character in the table. We find him here with all the information we need to fill his personal sheet. So first, his character name, owner. Then we choose his symbol, let's say the square. And then he gets his weapons. But where? In what boxes? Look, the setup paragraph says that characters are not alerted. That means that at the beginning of the showdown, they are not ready to fight. So all one-handed weapons are holstered and any two-handed weapon is in the other hand box. All firearms are uncocked, and that's it. Mark Wilson, the theater owner, is ready to fight. The number in a white circle is the character's endurance. 20 is the default value for most characters, and that means that our character has no extra endurance. And you do the same for all characters. Players fill 1 personal sheet for each. Some characters are more complex. The sheriff, the only character for side C player, is represented by the guard character. He has 3 weapons, he has 20 endurance points, but also some other data. These are his personal skills. 1H and 2H skills are aim time bonuses that applies every time the character shoots a gun. The sheriff is quite good at shooting and gets a +1 whatever gun he uses, one-handed or two-handed. The bonus skill gives the number of any bonus action card the character must add to his own action cards deck. There are 9 possible bonus cards numbered from 1 to 9, and because all these cards are double-sided, getting 1 bonus card gives 2 new possible actions to the character. Here, the guard character takes 1 bonus card number 6 and adds it to his standard 12-card deck. Now let's take a little time to see what these bonus cards are. Bonus card number 1 gives an additional advance action. It allows the character to advance once more during his turn, and this advance action is faster than the regular one. And on its other side, it's a turn action. The running boy, for example, has the bonus card number 1. That makes him fast and agile. Bonus cards 2 and 3 are faster draw and cock actions. The regular draw and cock action that every character has is a 3-segment action. So characters with these bonus cards, and especially bonus card number 2, are very fast shooters able to draw their gun faster than anyone else. Like the fast draw character, for example. Beware, the use of these bonus cards is somewhat limited. They cannot be used to move a 2-handed gun on the character sheet or to pick up an item from the hexagon. On their other side, these cards are regular shoot cards. And finally, the 6 other bonus cards give new options for brawling hand-to-hand combat. And we'll see that soon, before the end of this video. Some characters have penalties instead of bonuses. This woman gets a -1 on her aim time every time she shoots with a one-handed gun. She has no gun at start but only a knife, and if she finds a gun, she gets this penalty. And she has another penalty which in fact is not a penalty altogether. The letters OH means other hand. Usually, a character can never fire a one-handed gun he has in his other hand box. But with her OH skill, this woman can shoot with her other hand with an aim time penalty of -1, but still she can use her other hand to attack while other characters usually cannot at all. Note also that this woman has an endurance of 25 instead of the regular 20. She writes this on her personal sheet on the extra endurance table. And finally, a character can get a brawling bonus. This is an aim time bonus he uses when he attacks hand-to-hand with the brawling action. Like this John Henry character, a heavy brute with 40 points of endurance, a brawling bonus and a lot of brawling bonus cards. More on brawling combat very soon, I promise. So, back to our showdown setup. Each player gets his characters from the characters panel. And the scenario gives the map boards you use and where and in which order players place their characters' tokens. Here, player A sets up first, then player B, then player C. The scenario also gives the character order, and this order will be used every time 2 characters must reveal or resolve any action during the same segment. I found useful to associate character symbols and character order so that character number 1 always chooses the dot, character number 2 the square, and so on. And then each turn, character order can be simply read on the top card of each character's action deck. And voila, you know all the steps you need to set up a Gunslinger showdown. And I must confess that on my first games, I had some difficulties to figure out what to do next. Okay, the roadies, player B, will shoot at the theater guys, player A, who will shoot back in self-defense. But what about the sheriff, player C? Does he want to protect the so-called good guys? Are players A and C naturally allied against player B? No. Players in Gunslinger are always independent and they are each playing for their own victory. At the end of the showdown, there will be only one winner. And in order to understand what the sheriff goals are, you need to know how victory points are scored at the end of the game. When the game is over, usually after 20 turns, but the exact duration is specified for each scenario, players calculate their victory points. And first thing first, victory points are calculated on a character basis. Each character gets his own victory points. Player 1 with 4 characters will calculate victory points 4 times, 1 for each character. And then, after all calculations, a player's score, a side score, is the average of all its characters. For player C, it's easy. Player C victory points are the same as the sheriff's victory points, while player's A victory points are the average score of his 4 characters. The owner plus the barkeep plus John Henry plus Floozy divided by 4. Okay, for the example, let's suppose the showdown ends like this. The theater owner fled from the battle through the north side of the map. Note that a character who leaves the map during the game can never return. He is out of the game until the end. The barkeeper tried to hide behind his bar, but was shot to death by Ben Thompson, while his henchman passed out under the sheriff's shots and John Henry's bare fists. As you remember, a character passes out when his delay points are greater than his endurance for 2 consecutive turns. Meanwhile, there was a gun duel between the sheriff and Ben Thompson with a lot of blood and wounds. Finally, the sheriff fell dead and John Henry drew his gun and shot Ben, putting an end to the 2 rowdies' frenzy. Fine, now let's compute the scores. And first, characters get points according to their final status. 2 points if they survived, so 2 points for John Henry and Floozy. 0 points for a passed out character, Bill Johnson the henchman, and -8 for any killed character, the barkeeper, Ben Thompson and the sheriff. Of course, dying is the worst thing that can happen to a character, and that's why it costs so many victory points. Now, if you are wounded or overwhelmed by the fight, you can still surrender to avoid being killed. At the beginning of a turn, you just announce that your character surrenders. He is immediately removed from the game and cannot return later. He is out of the game. In the end, he only loses 2 victory points instead of the 8 if he had been killed. The owner did quite the same by running away from the showdown. This also cost 2 victory points. So -2 for the owner. And that's it for the final status victory points. Note that a character can get only one of these values. You cannot, for example, say that the owner must gain 2 victory points because he survived. No, a character who runs away cannot get any other status points. If a character ends the game with serious wounds, wherever he is, he must check if he survives these wounds. He draws 1 result card, only 1 whatever the number of serious wounds. Then he checks the value on the delay line and adds it to his number of serious wounds. If the number is 4 or more, he dies. If you remember the result card statistics, you see that a character with only 1 serious wound cannot die. A character with 2 serious wounds has 25% chance of dying. And a character with 4 serious wounds will die at the end of the game, whatever happens. Of course, you also earn victory points by killing your enemies. That is, anyone who is not on your side. It's the rough law of the West. 2 victory points for a character who kills an enemy, and 1 if the enemy just passed out. And these points go to the character who gives the killing shot, no matter what wounds or injuries other characters did before. 2 points for Ben Thompson for having killed the barkeeper, then 2 again for having killed the sheriff, and 2 points for John Henry who finally killed Ben Thompson. And what about the henchman? The sheriff and John Henry made him lose a lot of endurance, so who gets the 1 victory point for knocking him out? Well, the victory point goes to the one who inflicted the most damage. Here, let's say it's the sheriff. And yes, that means that during the game, players must note on their character sheets how many endurance points they remove from each character. And they must also note how many serious wounds they inflict, because if a character dies from his serious wounds, as we've just seen, the one who gets the kill enemy victory points is the one who inflicted the most serious wounds. And also -1 victory point if one of your allies is killed. Whatever your status, even a dead character gets this -1 if another character also died in his team. Here that gives a -1 for all the barkeeper's friends and the same for the henchman. And finally, players must check who holds the field at the end of the showdown. A player holds the field if he is the only one to have surviving characters on the map. That is, characters who got the +2 survive victory points. Then, each surviving character on this side gets 2 victory points. 2 points for John Henry and Floozy because their side, side A, holds the field at the end of the showdown. And as soon as a side holds the field, all enemy characters who passed out or who surrendered are captured. And these captured characters lose 4 victory points. -4 for the knockout henchman. Okay, we do the math and we compute the average values for each side. And we should say that with -1.25, player A is the winner of this sad day. But no, because look, the scenario says that player C gets a bonus of 6 victory points, +6 for the sheriff. So he wins with -1 point. And that's exactly what I meant when I said that this scenario special victory points help us understand the role of the sheriff. Thanks to these 6 bonus victory points, the goal for the sheriff becomes to keep a balance between both sides A and B. The best for him would be to calm down everyone, because if no one dies, the sheriff wins. But he will more probably shoot the ones who kill others. It's easy to imagine him saying, "I'll shoot the first who fires," and this can strongly influence other players' strategy. Personally, I think it's great like that, but I know that some of you may say, "Are you kidding? As player C, I would just fire from the door and kill blindly anyone in the bar, even Floozy the dancer. In terms of victory points, that seems so much efficient, no?" Yes, and you'd be probably right, but Gunslinger is an immersion game. Its goal is to make you live a Wild West showdown as if you were there. Player C is not just a player seated at his game table with his friends. Player C is the sheriff of Austin, Texas in 1876, trying to figure out who are the bad guys in this bar fight. And he would never fire blindly at a dancer or even a drunken rowdy. There is, without a doubt, a role-playing dimension in Gunslinger, and to be honest, when I play this game like its big brother Magic Realm from the same author, I don't even care about victory points. I play the showdown like a true life experience and see what happens. What's important isn't to know which player wins, but who was wounded, who died, what decisions each side took. Did anyone shoot Floozy the dancer? You can even throw away my beautiful victory points panel and play without victory points at all. That's what immersion games are, some kind of middle point between board games and role-playing games. Okay, that being said, back to the game, because it's time to dive a little deeper into firearms technology. As you know, each character comes to the game with his own weapons. And for now, the only difference you know between these weapons is that two-handed guns need 2 hands, while one-handed guns need 1 hand. It's a little light for a gun duel simulation. But if you remember, you know also that these weapons are grouped into damage categories. According to the resolution table, a Colt 45 will do more damage than a Winchester 44S. Fine, but there is more. First, let's talk about rifles. The Henry rifle, the Sharps Old 50, the Springfield trapdoor rifle, or the Winchester rifle and carbine. These are very accurate weapons that can fire at long range. The first 4 have D3 or D4 on their token. That means that when firing these weapons, range is divided by 3 or 4. In this example, the range between both characters is 8. Eagle fires with an H44 while Lucky uses a W44. Eagle divides range by 3. 8 divided by 3 is 2 because fractions are always rounded down. Lucky divides range by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2 also. This increases tremendously their chance to hit. Always be cautious if your opponent uses such a weapon. Still, there is a prerequisite. The divider works only if the character has 4 aim points or more. And these aim points must come only from the aim action, so only aim cardboard counters. Eagle, for example, cannot count his two-handed weapon skill for this prerequisite. The Winchester carbine W44S works the same. It divides range only by 2, but with a prerequisite of only 2 aim points. And now let's talk about shotguns, the R10 weapon and the sawed-off shotgun R10S. These two weapons don't shoot at a single target like others, but they hit all targets, enemies and friends alike, in a blast zone. What is a shotgun's blast zone? For a regular R10 shotgun, the firer just chooses one hexagon 6 hexagons away. And then he puts a blast token in each hexagon on a straight line between him and this 6 hexes away hexagon. Note that if there is another character in his own hexagon, he will be also hit by the shot. That's why there is a B7 on the weapons token, 7 for a 7 hexagon long blast zone. If he chooses this hexagon instead, in this case it draws a line, you can even use a thread, and this shows where to put the blast tokens, here, here, and look, there can be a problem where the line crosses two hexagons. In such a case, the firer chooses the hexagon to the left of the line or the one to the right. Let's say the one to the right, and in the end, there must be 7 blast tokens. In this last example, the line goes exactly between two hexagons 3 times. So, this is exactly the same, but the firer must take the same decision, left or right, for all 3 choices. Okay, this is the blast zone for the R10 shotgun, and in theory it can hit 7 targets with only 1 shot. The R10S shotgun is the same weapon, but whose barrel is sawed. It fires at shorter range, but following a cone pattern instead of a straight line. Its blast zone is all the hexagons between the firer and 2 blast tokens the player puts in 2 adjacent hexagons 4 hexes away. And with the same rules as the regular R10 shotgun, you put blast tokens in every hexagon in the triangle between the 2 straight lines. Okay, now how to resolve a shotgun fire. First, the firer must designate his main target, the character he wants to harm the most. Only one main target. In this example, there are 2 characters in his blast zone, the mountain man and a poor lady that has nothing to do here in the middle of the fight. So here, the firer declares that the mountain man is his main target. The lady will only take collateral damages. And then he draws 1 result card for each character in his main zone. For the main target, the mountain man, the aim time is, as usual, the one from the shoot card used, plus any aim counters on the main target, plus the distance between the firer and his target. And that means that the further away the target, the easier it is to hit. And this is because of the spreading effect of the shotgun blast. For the sawed-off R10S, you add +1 to this distance and the aim time because the spreading effect is even wider. Range 2 aim time 6, this is a headshot. For the poor lady, this is a little different. Because she was not specifically aimed by the firer, she only gets the distance part of the aim time. Distance 3 +1 because it is a sawed-off shotgun. On her own result card, with an aim time of 4, distance 3, the poor woman takes a vital wound. Note that a shotgun never gets a bullseye result. Every bullseye is replaced by a critical result. And a malfunction is only possible on the main target's result card. If such a malfunction is drawn for a collateral target, it is discarded and another card is drawn instead. Fine, and now, what are the consequences of this shot? As usual, we take the impact table, but there is no line for the R10 or R10S shotguns. And that's because for shotguns, because of the spreading effect, damage decreases with distance. So, the further away a target is, the easier it is to hit, but the less damage it will take. In this new first column, dedicated to shotguns only, we look at the distance between the firer and his target. +1 for the sawed-off version that will do less damage. So, the mountain man got a head result. At a distance of 2, +1 for the sawed-off gun, he will be quite severely stunned. And the lady got a vital result. At a distance of 3 + 1 = 4, she dies. This is pure bad luck. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's it. With a little funny rule before going on, funny but realistic and necessary, if the shotgun firer is standing upright and his main target is also upright, any down collateral target gets a -1 penalty on her aim time. The blast has some chance to just pass over her head. Shotguns are also double-barrel guns. There are 3 double-barrel weapons in the game, the 2 shotguns, R10 and R10S, and the little R41D Derringer pistol. These weapons have 2 barrels, 2 triggers, and can fire 2 bullets. But first, they need only 1 regular cock action to cock both barrels. Then, on a shoot action, the player must choose and declare whether he fires 1 bullet or both at once. If he fires both, he must choose the same target twice. If he fires both, he resolves the same shot twice with 2 result cards, just as if it was from 2 different weapons. If he fires only 1 barrel, he must remember that this barrel is uncocked and empty, while the other is still cocked and loaded. Of course, this choice must be announced when the shoot action card is revealed. And note that when you fire both barrels of a shotgun, you resolve twice on every character in the blast zone. Okay, and now we must talk about all kinds of ammunitions. As you remember, most guns in the game use what is called hand-loaded ammunitions. They are noted as circles on the character's personal sheet, and they can be reloaded one by one with a load action. Most of the one-handed guns work with a 6-bullet magazine, but one, the C32, can only hold 5 ammunitions. For two-handed weapons, the SH50 and SD58 can hold only 1 bullet, so they must be reloaded between each shot. The Winchester 44 can hold 16 ammunitions, 13 for its carbine version, the W44S. Some weapons must be break-opened to be reloaded. That means you must break the barrel to put the ammunition inside. With the first load action, you break the gun. You note that on your character sheet. Then, once opened, with every other load action, you can either add 0 to 5 ammunitions in the gun, or you can close the gun. Once closed, it must still be cocked before firing. And of course, while it is open, it cannot be cocked or aim or shoot. So, with 3 load actions, you can add 5 ammunitions to your gun, which is not so bad if you remember that with 3 load actions, a regular hand-loaded gun can only receive 3 ammunitions. There are 2 one-handed guns with a magazine of 6 bullets, SW38 and SW45. 6 bullets, that's 1 too many to reload it with the 1 load action, but you can use it with only 5 bullets, of course. And the H44 rifle with 16 ammunitions in the magazine. Then you have all double-barreled weapons we already know that are also break-open weapons. R41D, R10 and R10S, with 2 ammunitions inside, of course 1 per barrel. And finally, the old cap and ball guns. On character sheets, all ammunitions from such guns are noted as triangles. Why triangles? Because their loading process takes place in 3 steps. First, you put the gunpowder in the magazine, then you add the bullet, then you push the bullet with some tool. And you must do that for every single ammunition. In game turns, you need 3 load actions to add 1 ammunition in your gun. With every load action, you add one of the triangle sides, and the gun can fire 1 ammunition only when the triangle is complete. Of course, after loading the gun, as usual, it is uncocked. Only 2 guns use this method, the C36C and the C45C, each with 6 bullets in the magazine. Hopefully, all these guns are fully loaded at the beginning of any showdown. And voila! Here are the 16 gun types you'll find in the game. You should also remember that these ammunition types also change the way these guns can malfunction. On a malfunction result card, hand-loaded and break-open guns use the hand-loaded line, while cap-and-ball guns use the cap-and-ball line. Store-bought ammunitions are only used in the role-playing version of Gunslinger. Okay, and before leaving firearms, we must finally talk about fanfiring. Fanfiring, as you know, is an option you find on some action cards: shoot, cock aim shoot, and draw and cock. This special kind of fire is when you try to cock and fire with a single move. You need both your hands to do that, and this works only with a one-handed gun. With one hand you cock, and with the other you pull the trigger and fire. So, with this special option, a character can fire with an uncocked gun. Aim time is 0, and you cannot use any aim counter. You cannot aim with an uncocked gun and fanfire with this aim. And because with an aim time of 0 you cannot harm your target, that means that only a character with a special fire bonus can use fanfire. The Marshal, for example, with a one-handed gun skill of +3 can fanfire with an aim time of 3. That is not so bad and can surprise a careless outlaw. And now, brace yourself, we are going to tackle a big fat topic: obstacles and terrain. In Gunslinger, it can be very fun to play a Mexican standoff in the middle of nowhere, let's say at OK Corral, for example. But of course, you'd also like to fight in a richer environment, with a lot of covers and obstacles. There are 8 double-sided maps in Gunslinger with a lot of terrains and buildings, typical of Wild West scenes. And so now we have to learn how to cope with all these different terrains and obstacles. And first look, on a typical Gunslinger map, all hexagons are not really hexagonal. Here, for example, there is a trough. The trough itself is a rectangle, so its hexagon is halved and 2 adjacent hexagons are a little distorted. And all these boxes are actual playable hexagons. A character can be here, here, or here, always facing toward one of the 6 usual directions. And he can even stand in the trough itself. The trough is a valid hexagon, or let's say a box, because it has nothing to do with a geometrical hexagon. And note that even on this strange rectangular box, the character must face one of the 6 regular directions. Note that a character in the half hexagon behind the trough, who chooses the advance action, can go ahead right to the adjacent hexagon as usual. But if he chooses to go straight ahead or ahead left, in both cases he steps into the trough. The trough is the adjacent box in these directions. He cannot walk over it. Beware, because it is a little tricky. Movement is calculated in boxes. If this character wants to move to this hexagon, he will need 5 movement actions. 5 because he must move onto the trough on his way, and it makes him lose 1 movement action. But when it comes to firing, distances are calculated in hexagons. If the same character wants to fire to that same hexagon, distance is 4. A hexagon that is cut in 2 halves counts as 2 boxes, but only 1 hexagon. And this is what happens with the trough. Okay, go on. This trough is an obstacle. And the definition of an obstacle is any box on the map with no printed coordinates. Look, almost all hexagons have coordinates printed on them, like here with hexagon 017. Sometimes these coordinates can be printed in odd places, I mean not in the center of the hexagon. Okay, and all these boxes are still regular hexagons for game purposes. But the trough has no coordinates at all, so it is an obstacle. For the same reason, the bed and the table are also obstacles. And the desk with its weird shape is an obstacle. But beware, the ladder is not an obstacle because it has its S16 coordinates printed on it. Okay, fine, but why does it matter? Because every time a character enters or leaves an obstacle, he must draw 2 delay cards, 2 result cards reading the delay line. If the guard backs up onto the bed, he draws 2 cards and gets 3 delay points. And the same if he steps down the bed, 2 more delay cards when he leaves the obstacle. And thus, in this game, you can climb on what you want: bed, desk, table, trough. The 2 delay cards penalty applies even if the movement is because of a stagger result. And this is the same cost whether the character is upright or down. Beware, there are 3 special cases. If a character enters or staggers into a well or a forge, this character instantly dies. And of course, a tree trunk is not an obstacle. Moving there is prohibited, no character can enter a tree trunk. In other words, cowboys don't climb trees. Note that boardwalks don't cut their hexagon in 2 parts, boardwalks are just for decoration. Now there are walls. A wall cuts its hexagon in 2 halves, 2 separate boxes. And of course, a character cannot move through a wall. If, for example, you still play a backup card for your character in hexagon G10, whatever option you choose, he will try to go through the wall. So, the movement action is cancelled and your character draws 2 delay cards. If the same character walks through a door, he still draws 2 delay cards, but in this case, the movement is not cancelled. Moving through a door can always cost you delay. And the same if you want to go through a window, 2 delay cards. Note, and that is very important, a character can move around a corner without any penalty. This character can move directly to this half hexagon without any penalty. This is very useful to know, especially when your character seeks cover. And there is finally a very special item, the saloon swinging doors. They are so easy to open that they don't even cut their hex in 2 parts. In game terms, it's exactly as if these doors don't exist at all. Now, let's see some special hex-side terrains. Terrains that are not on an hexagon but between 2 of them. First, the slope. This huge tree is planted on some kind of hillock, and the shaky brown line shows the border between ground level hexagons and higher ground. Whenever a character crosses this border, either upwards or downwards, he draws 2 delay cards. And this is exactly the same for banks that are slopes but between ground level and 1 level below the ground. And finally, this is also the same cost, 2 delay cards, to cross a fence. Now a very special case, the saloon stage. The stage is made of 7 hexagons or half hexagons. And all these boxes are treated as obstacles, even if they have printed coordinates. So, a character who is in front of the stage can move up onto it, but it costs 2 delay cards. Then, as long as she stays on the stage, her movements are free. But if she walks down the stage, she must again draw 2 delay cards. But she gets no penalty at all if she goes up or down through steps hexagons. These are 2 half hexagons on both sides of the stage. And it should be over with no more terrain to see, but there is one more thing you can bump into, and that is other characters. Let's say in this example that orange character makes this move. He enters red character's hexagon, and he can do that whether red character is a friend or an enemy. Several characters can stand in the same hexagon. But as he enters the hexagon, both characters must draw one delay card, one result card reading the delay line. No delay card is drawn when a character leaves another character's hexagon, only when he enters. But both must draw, even the one who doesn't move. And this rule leads to some special cases. Both orange and red characters have played an advance action card. On segment number 2, they must both actually move, and let's say that orange comes first in player order. So orange character should move into red's hexagon, and both should draw one delay card, but no, because red character moves during the same segment, there is no real interaction and both can move without any penalty. If the announced movement is this one, segment 2 orange character advances, both draw a delay card and red player gets one delay point. And so, red character will have to wait until segment number 4 to resolve his backup movement. And that's it, you know all terrains in the game and how they can hinder movement. But they can also hinder fire. And let's see now how terrain can hide characters from enemy fire and give them cover. Inocente is in front of Fast Eddie. There's nothing between them, of course they see each other and can fire at each other. And never forget that prior to all we are going to say about obstacles and lines of sight, a character's target must be in his aim zone in order to be visible. Outside his aim zone, a character sees nothing. And first, there are two things that completely blocks the sight between two characters. First, a wall. In this example, there is a window and a door on both sides, but the exact line of sight we can draw between both players with a thread crosses the wall. So, whatever character's situation or status, there's nothing to do, they'll never see each other. The same for trees. Tree trunks in dark brown always block line of sight. But wait, here you could argue that it is not so obvious that the line of sight actually goes through the tree trunk. Are you sure that they cannot see each other? And that's where Richard Hamblin, Gunslinger's designer, added one of the most impressive mechanisms I ever saw in a game, so clever and so simple at the same time. Listen, when drawing the line of sight between two characters, in fact, you draw it between the printed coordinates of their hexagon. In our example, that means between this J21 text and this E19. The firer, the one who tries to see the other, can choose exactly to what part of each text he will link his line. And as you can see, whatever he chooses, the tree trunk will always block the line. Note that the line of sight is blocked only if it actually cuts the trunk's brown depiction on the map. Red character stays close to the tree trunk to hide from orange character's fire, and that's why hexagon coordinates are often printed in weird locations. They show exactly where a character stands to get the best cover. Around the well or rock piles, behind the counter, along the wall, or around the corner. It's pure game design genius, and it even helps players to visualize and imagine where and how their characters actually stand. Walls and trees block the line of sight. And what about obstacles? You remember all boxes on the map without printed coordinates. Trough, bed, desk, bar, counter, rock pile, headstone, forge, well, and so on. All these are obstacles. And all are mid-sized, about 4 or 5 feet high, a little more than 1 meter. Let's take the rock pile as an example, but remember that all obstacles are the same when it comes to line of sight. Okay, in a situation like this, with wide open space, you can consider that an obstacle doesn't block the line of sight. And in fact, there are only 2 cases where an obstacle blocks the sight. First, that's when both characters are below the obstacle. That is, their height is lower than the obstacle's height. And how is it possible? Because characters' height is always higher than obstacles. No, that's only true with upright characters who are taller than obstacles. As soon as a character gets down, he becomes smaller. So in our example, if both characters are down, both are lower than the obstacle and they don't see each other anymore. And note that the line of sight is blocked only if both the firer and its target are lower than the obstacle. If one of the two is higher, the line is not blocked. Except in one case, and this is our second case. If one of the characters is adjacent to the obstacle and lower, and this works both ways. Orange character cannot fire at red, but red character cannot fire at orange either. If he wants to shoot, he must pop up his head, and that's what we will see very soon with heads rules. Okay, and that's pretty much it. With these few rules, you have enough to play most of the showdowns. And before making things a little more complex, let's see some special cases. An obstacle can block the line of sight only if it is between both characters. If a character is on the obstacle, of course, the obstacle doesn't hinder his sight or any sight toward him. And note on this example that a down character on an obstacle has the same height as an upright character. This can be useful in some situations like this one. Both players can see each other over the well, even if both are down, because red character being down upon an obstacle is in fact as tall as an upright character and is not lower than the well. And I take advantage of this example to point out that lines of sight are drawn between the hexagon's printed coordinates, but when a character is on an obstacle, there are no printed coordinates, because it's the very definition of what is an obstacle, no printed coordinates. In such a case, the player who checked the line of sight can draw it to any point on the obstacle. And in some cases, where two maps are put side by side, some hexagons can have two printed coordinates, twice the same or different. And in this case, line of sight can be freely drawn to either one of the two coordinates. A character is not an obstacle. Red and orange characters can see and fire at each other without worrying about blue John Henry. A character never hinders the sight of others. And what about doors? In Gunslinger, a door is always closed when no one is using it. So when it comes to sight and fire, a door is like a wall. Of course, the saloon swinging doors are an exception. It's as if they don't exist, so you can see and fire through them. And finally, windows. They hinder sight exactly like an obstacle. In fact, the obstacle is the piece of wall just under the window. And so, if both characters are down, they cannot see each other through the window. And the same if only one character is down but adjacent to the window. And you need all these rules to know if your character can see his target in order to shoot it. But not only to shoot, you cannot either aim at a character you cannot see. And if you aim at an empty hexagon, because you can always do that, you aim as if there was an upright character in this hex. For example, red character can aim at the hexagon just behind the window, even if he wouldn't see a down character in this location. Okay, and now let's go into the wild. These two maps are special because some of their hexagons have special colors. Some are yellowish, others are reddish. And that's because their ground level is lower or higher. Yellow hexagons are on the bottom of a gully, let's say elevation -1, while red hexagons are on top of a hillock, let's say elevation +1. And they work exactly as new ground level. Before there were only one ground level, level 0, and now there are two other levels, -1 and +1. Gullies hexagons are separated from ground level by bank X sides and slope X sides for hillock hexagons. Okay, and as long as characters are both at the same elevation, rules apply as usual. It makes no difference if all happens at level +1, 0 or -1. But if you consider a situation where characters stand on different elevations, you need to visualize the three elevations on top of each other like this. And the terrain hex sides, bank and slope, take their place between elevations. And so first, this new diagram can help you to handle some easy situations. Ike wants to fire at the mountain man. They are both at the same elevation, -1 at the bottom of the gully. Same elevation, so the regular rules apply. Ike and his target stand upright, but the bank hex side is higher than both of them. Therefore, the line of sight is blocked. Ike cannot fire at the mountain man. On the hillock, if Eagle wants to shoot the marshal, his line of sight crosses the slope. But this time it's different. The slope is below both characters and they see each other, even if they are down. Okay, these are the easy cases. Banks and slopes behave as if they were obstacles, following the regular rules. And what happens now if both characters don't stand on the same elevation? In this case, we only need one more rule. The line of sight is blocked if there is an obstacle whose elevation is equal or higher than both characters. Beware, we don't talk about height, but about elevation, that is 0 for ground, -1 for gully, and +1 for hillock. Okay, that seems easy enough. Let's take a simple example. Eagle wants to shoot the marshal, and what is the problem? There is no obstacle between them, is it? In fact, not only obstacle can block the line of sight, but also windows, slopes, and banks. So obviously there's a slope between them. And there's still another problem. What is the elevation of a slope? 0 or +1? Slopes and banks are always considered on elevation 0. The slope elevation, 0, is not greater than both characters because with an elevation of +1, Eagle is higher than the slope. So, Eagle can see and fire at the marshal and vice versa. It doesn't change anything if Eagle is down. On a hillock in general, it's easy to see far away. Now this is different. There is a new obstacle, the headstone, and this time the obstacle's elevation is +1, the same as Eagle. So the obstacle's elevation is equal or greater than both characters. The line of sight is blocked. And what about the gully? Look, as this situation seems very close to the former one. Eagle is above the marshal and would like to shoot him. But this time, his elevation is not higher than the terrain's features, the bank, because the bank's elevation is 0, just like him. His line of sight is blocked. This gully is a deep ditch and is not easy to see inside because of what we could call the plateau effect. But this is no more a problem if Eagle stands on the edge. This is an exception to the rule. The line of sight is not blocked if a character is adjacent to the obstacle and higher than it. In terms of height, of course, even adjacent, you cannot see through an obstacle higher than you. From this location, Eagle can fire at the marshal. Okay, and at last, we are done with terrain and line of sight. This gives a quite convoluted panel, but in 90% of cases, you'll only use the left-hand part when both characters share the same elevation. So look, here is what I can do. I cut this panel. On the left, the part you'll use all the time, and on the right, the rules you'll need only when dealing with hillock, gullies, or, as we could see later, with multi-story buildings. Voilà. Just note before going on that we talked about walls, trees, obstacles, and so on, but we didn't talk about fences, and that's just because fences never block fire or sight. Heads. It's time to play with our heads. Lightning, the blue character, is down, crouching behind a trough. Hiding from the cattle baron, the orange character, the cattle baron cannot see Lightning, and the reverse is true, no one can shoot anyone. From this position, Lightning can try to slide his upper body over the trough just enough to shoot the cattle baron. This is what the head counter represents. And of course, by doing so, he becomes a little more visible and the cattle baron can shoot back at him by aiming at his head counter. Okay, first, there are two action cards that deal with your head placement. Twice the same, head out back, and it costs 2 segments. This action gives no choice. When you resolve it, you just put a head counter in the hex straight ahead of your character. And it must be this hex, the one straight in front of him. In our example, there is no hexagon straight in front of blue character, there is an obstacle instead, the trough. So, he puts his head on the obstacle, on the trough. And note that this is not a movement, but a simple change of stance. So, even if he puts his head on an obstacle, it doesn't cost delay cards as if he were moving onto that same obstacle. Whether upright or down, a character can put his head token beyond a wall corner, through a door, or a window, through a bank exide, and of course on an obstacle. And with the same action head out back, you remove your head from the map. And in fact, you have no choice. If you have a no head token, you gain 1, and if you have 1, you remove it. Adding your head on the map is not a movement, but still, if, for example, the drifter here plays his head out back card, he must add his head in the hexagon straight ahead, but there is a wall in the way, so this cancels his action and he draws 2 delay cards. And when a head token is on the map, it stays where it is. A head token never moves. Let's suppose the drifter puts his head through the window. From then, his head stays on the map as long as it is in one of the 3 hexagons in front of the drifter. He can turn, for example, without losing his head token, but if he turns again, his head is not in front of him anymore and it is removed from the map immediately, freely and without any delay penalty. Okay, but if you put your head through a window, a corner or on an obstacle, that's not for the beauty of it. That's to see and to fire through this window or beyond this corner or this obstacle. So how does it work? Texas, the blue character, just entered the general store, whose owner is hiding behind his counter. With this action deck, the owner can put his head, understand, lean his upper body on the counter, fire at Texas, then take his head back, understand, go back to cover. So let's go. Head out, and he shoots. Firing from a head counter is as easy as any regular shot. And first thing to say, when a character has a head counter and fires, he must fire from his head token. The range to his target is counted from his head. Texas is 5 hexes away from the owner's head. Note that in this case, that makes no difference. But in this other example, if the kid fires on the US Scout, the distance is 2. But there is always a range penalty for firing from a head token, a +1 penalty. So, when resolving both these shots, the owner fires at a range of 6 and the kid at a range of 3. Note that the aim zone stays the same whether the character has a head token or not. The aim zone is not shifted to the head hexagon. It can matter if the head is 1 hexagon away from the body, like in the corner example. Back to the owner versus Texas example. If Texas is here instead and down, the owner should not see Texas because they are both down with an obstacle between them, but in fact, yes, he can see his target because a head counter is always considered to be at the height of an upright character. So here, the owner can fire at Texas. And what if, on the opposite, someone tries to shoot at a character's head token? What if Texas tries to shoot the owner? When you shoot, you can freely choose your target, so you can either fire at the character's main token or at his head token. Both are valid targets. In our example, in fact, Texas has no choice. He has only a line of sight to the head token and not to the owner's body, because as we just saw, a head token's height is always the one of an upright character. And then, there is also a +1 range penalty for firing at a head token. Here, Texas uses a range of 6 to the owner's head. And note that both range penalties are cumulative. If Texas is himself hidden behind this other counter, with his head on the counter, the range to the owner's head would be 6, 4 hexagons with the head penalty twice. Another example, the kid is hiding behind a corner, but the mountain man is coming and is angry. The mountain man can aim at the kid, and when doing so, he must choose whether he aims at the kid's main body or his head. And in fact, it doesn't matter, because when he shoots, he can always freely transfer all his aim from the head to the main body and vice versa, even if, like in this example, they are 1 hexagon apart. And this without any aim penalty. And of course, when firing at a head token, the target gets the head status. It is more difficult to harm someone whose upper body you can only see. And so in our example, there's no point for the mountain man to aim at the kid's head. His body is easier to shoot and to wound. And finally, a last thing about heads. When doing a draw action, a character can pick up an item from the map, from his body's hexagon, but also from his head hexagon. That's how, for example, a character can pick up money bags from the bank's vault without having to actually enter the vault. And now it's time to see who are the real men. Drop your guns, gentlemen, and let's fight with your hands. Let's see how to deal with brawling in Gunslinger. So, basically, brawling is when you try to hit your opponent with any blunt or sharp weapon or even with your bare hands. You can strike with the weapon you hold in one hand. The most obvious weapon is your gun, using its butt to strike. Other possible one-handed weapons are a knife, a saber, a tomahawk, or even a bottle or a pail. To strike with, you must hold your weapon in your gun hand box, or the other hand box, in which case you must use your other hand skill. Speaking of skill, you don't use your shooting skills 1H and 2H when brawling. There is another BR skill you use instead. You can also strike with the two-handed weapon you hold in your both hands box, your rifle or your shotgun's butt, or a two-handed axe, a pitchfork or a simple spade. And finally, you can fight with your bare hands without any weapon. And so, what's the difference with shooting a gun? When you make a brawl attack, you don't use a shoot action, of course. There are 3 standard attack cards: jab, swing, and belt. They correspond to 3 different ways of striking, and they can hit a target in one of the 3 hexagons in front of your character, or in the same hexagon. The character must name his target when he reveals his attack card, and like in this example, he can name a target that is not in one of his front adjacent hexagons, hoping that this target will advance before resolving the attack. Beware, brawling attack cards, like shoot cards, are always resolved before other cards, even with the same segment number. So for example, if John Henry plays a jab attack instead of a swing, he will not hit Fast Eddie because whatever player order, Fast Eddie's advance will occur after John Henry's jab attack. So, when John Henry attacks, Fast Eddie is not in one of his 3 front hexagons. Fine, let's suppose that positions are good and it's resolution time. Brawling attack resolution is very close to a gunshot. You draw a result card and see if you hit, with a range of 0 or 1. And instead of aim time, brawling attacks use wielding. Aim never count in brawling attack. No aim time, no aim counters. The wielding factor you use instead depends on the weapon and if it's easy to handle. Each weapon has its wielding factor, from the easiest to handle, gun's butt or a knife or tomahawk, down to the most clumsy weapons, the pitchfork and the spade. Two-handed weapons are more difficult to use, and if you strike bare hands, it's the most efficient attack, but, as we will see very soon, not the one that inflicts the most damage. Brawling attacks use target status as usual. It is more difficult to hit a moving or running target, or his head, or if he is down. Another difference is that, with a brawling attack, bullseye results are converted into another result depending on the attack you used. For swing and belt attacks, it can depend on whether the attacker strikes upward, that is, if the attacker is on a lower height than the defender typically. This happens when the attacker is down and his target is upright. So, you can see that with its critical hit, a belt attack can be far more dangerous than a jab attack, but it's slower. Some characters are better at brawling than others. There is a brawling skill that is added to the weapon's wielding factor when resolving the attack. The other hand skill also indicates if the character is able to attack with his other hand and what penalty applies. Note that there is no malfunction when brawling. If you draw a malfunction result card, you discard it and draw another one. And that's it. And now that you know if you hit your target and where, there's a new table instead of the former impact table that gives the damage to your target. This table is the striking table, and it is used exactly like the impact table we used after shooting. Easy. Of course, you'll find all these tables that I redesigned on Board Game Geek's Gunslinger dedicated webpage, free to download and to print. Okay, but if someone is attacking you with his bare fist or any weapon, you can try to defend. As there are 3 regular attacks in any character's deck, there are also 3 defense actions: duck, block, and guard. When you reveal a defense, you must name the enemy character you are defending from. You cannot defend globally against everyone. You name an attacker and defends only against his attacks. Then, your defense starts at the very beginning of its segment, let's say a tenth of a second before attacks and shots. And then, this defense is active until the resolution of your next action. So, if you play a block defense, then an advance, segment 1, nothing happens. Segment 2, the block defense becomes active even before any possible attack. So, if your opponent attacks on segment 2, your block defense is on. Segment 3, the same. If your opponent attacks, you are protected by your defense. Segment 4, this is interesting. Because attacks happens before regular actions, if your opponent attacks you, you are still protected by your defense. So all in all, your block defense was on for 3 consecutive segments. Note that you can even not put any action behind your defense to stay protected until the end of the turn. Okay, but all defenses don't work against all attacks. The defense you choose must fit your opponent's attack. Duck protects against jab and swing, block against jab and belt, and guard against swing and belt. There is a rock, paper, scissors effect in attack and defense. So if your defense doesn't fit, you play the block against a swing, your opponent's attack works as if you didn't defend at all. But if your defense corresponds to your opponent's attack, first this attack is cancelled right away, and your opponent gets a penalty. This penalty depends on your defense. If you actually duck your opponent, he draws 1 delay card. And if you block or guard him, he draws 2 delay cards. And voila, that's how attack and defense work in Gunslinger. And that's not over, not yet. You can strike with any item you hold in your hand, but you can also throw it. Throwing is a mix between shooting and brawling. When you throw an item, it's like shooting, but with the brawling weapon you have in your hands instead of a gun's bullet. When you reveal your throw action, you must declare what you will throw and at what target. You can throw any item or weapon you could strike with, a one-handed item in one of your hands or a two-handed item in both your hands. and you can target a character to hit him. You can, for example, throw a knife at your opponent or even your gun if you have no ammunition anymore. But you can also target the hexagon. In this case, you don't want to harm anyone. You just want your item to be in this hexagon. This is how, for example, you can throw an item to one of your friends, a money bag or a weapon for your weaponless friend. Your range, the maximum distance where you can throw your item to, is equal to the item's wielding factor. You can throw a knife 4 axes away, but a spade only to an adjacent hexagon. In any case, you will never throw an item very far. When it's time to resolve your throw, you draw a result card. Aim time works like for a firearm. Basic aim time on the card plus any aim counter you can accumulate with the aim action. Note that you can use the same aim point either to shoot or to throw. There is only one kind of aim points. 1H and 2H skills cannot be used, but the Brawling BR skill can be used instead as an aim time bonus. Other hand OH skill tells you if you can throw a one-handed item with your other hand and with what penalty. There is no possible malfunction. Any malfunction card is discarded and another one is drawn. And damages are taken from the striking table according to the item you throw and the hit location you get on the result card. If your weapon or item hits its target, that is, if you get a result other than missed, then, after the throw, the item stays on the floor in its target's hexagon. But if you got a missed result, you immediately draw a new result card and get on the X line where the item lands. This gives a hexagon adjacent to the target relative to the target's facing. Straight ahead, for example, is the hexagon straight in front of the target. And it's time to see the last action card we don't know yet, Strength. In some way, Strength is to Brawling what aiming is to shooting. By playing a Strength action before striking, you increase your chance to hit and make damage. Okay, it looks like aiming, but there are a lot of differences. First, you never play a Strength card alone. When you reveal a Strength card from your action deck, you immediately reveal the following card, an attack or a throw. This is the attack or the throw to which the Strength is applied. Here, this Strength card is linked to an attack jab card and this gives one unique action, a strengthen jab whose segment number is 2 + 2 = 4. And so, the player must make choices and declare them for both cards at reveal time. He names the jab's target, and for the Strength card, he must choose between two options. First, he can increase the damage he can do by a bonus of +2. So, if he hits and do actual damage on the striking table, all numbered results are increased by +2. If he gets a light 1 result, for example, it becomes a light 3. And that explains why you can find in this table some strange results like this serious 0. It seems weird. 0 serious wound is no wound at all, isn't it? But this result allows a serious 2 result if its attack is linked to a Strength card. The second possible choice is to increase the wielding of your attack. With this choice, you increase your chance to hit. This +4 wielding bonus can make the difference and help you reach a vital point on your target. In this example, if I am striking with my rifle's butt that have a wielding of 2, 2 + 4 = 6 against a target in an adjacent hexagon that gives a bullseye result instead of a leg wound, and a bullseye gives a side wound because I used the jab attack. And because wielding is also the maximum range you can reach when throwing a weapon or an item, playing a Strength card with a throw action can also increase your range. With these two cards played together, a character can throw this knife 8 hexagons away, 4 plus 4, with a basic aim time of 2 plus 4 equals 6. And that's it for strength and all regular brawling actions. Now you remember that some characters get bonus cards into their hand. In other words, they get bonus action they can do that other characters cannot. John Henry has bonus cards 5, 6, 8 and 9. These are brawling cards. And in fact, all bonus cards from number 4 to 9 are brawling cards. Let's see now what they add to the game. Chop and Hook, bonus attacks number 4 and 6, just add some new options to the panel. Chop can be blocked by the duck defense and Hook by block and guard. And on the other side, these cards add new defense, cover up and sidestep. Okay, nothing really new. All these attacks only differ through their attack-defense combinations, but also through their segment cost. Some are faster than others, and the body part they hit in case of a bullseye. From there, the remaining bonus cards add new ways of attacking and defending. Kick, lock and bear hug are somewhat special attacks because they don't use any weapon. Still, you can have a weapon in your hands when using these attacks, but it doesn't matter. These attacks use their own wielding factor of 3 regardless of any weapon you may own. The kick attack is still very close to other attacks, nothing special to say. With lock and bear hug, you try to grab your opponent in your arms. And so first, your target must be in the same hexagon than you. And then, as soon as the attack card is revealed, its target is frozen and cannot leave the hexagon anymore. Any action that would do so is cancelled. So, for example, if you reveal a bear hug at the beginning of your turn, your target cannot leave the hexagon until the end of segment 3. Note that these attacks are resolved and can do damage on their third segment at resolution time. This is a very unique feature that these cards have two effects. One, the frozen effect that triggers when revealed, and the other, the actual damage at resolution time. Of course, these attacks can be cancelled by a matching defense, and this defense must be active, so resolved, before the effect they want to cancel, the frozen effect and or the actual damage. The hip throw and the trip defense add new defensive combinations, but also if they actually block their opponent's attack, their penalty is stronger than usual, dropping their target to the ground with a light 1 damage. And finally, the last bonus card, number 9, and the back of the bear hug card, number 8. These two cards give more strength options. If you add them to the regular strength card, that gives 4 possible strength actions with different segment costs and different bonuses. Some are faster, some are stronger. Okay, and voila, that's all I have to teach you about Gunslinger. All these rules from my 2 videos are more than enough to play the game with its 26 showdowns and 8 variants. You can even create your own scenarios. Still, there are other rules in the official rulebook that I didn't cover in my videos. These rules add more chrome, more items and more situations, horses and wagons, smoke, dynamite, or movable obstacles like table or rocks, and also multi-story buildings. I invite you to check these rules if you still want more depth and complexity. Some rules are added just for one scenario, like Night and Campfire, for example. You'll read these rules when playing these particular showdowns. The game also provides rules for semi-blind games. These are called hunting rules, where characters must write their actions in advance before they actually see each other on the board. And of course, a role-playing section to follow your characters from a showdown to the next, with experience leveling in between. Of course, all panels we've built together during these videos can be found and downloaded for free on the Board Game Geeks Gunslinger webpage. with the special action cards I designed and showed you in these videos. You'll find the links in the description. Voila! I won't go any further, I let you with this masterpiece of gaming history, and I go back to my editing workshop to build my next series of videos about another immersion game, these games I love so much and I want to promote on my channel. If you want to help me a little with this cultural quest, I have a Patreon and a Tipeee page where you can donate. Thank you my friends, salut à tous et à bientôt chez Jean-Michel Grosjeu.